Welcome to another episode of Calgary in Depth. I'm here at the Windsor Rose. It's a very nice pub here in south end of Calgary in the community of Walden, and I'm with MacDonald today. He's a local lawyer who specializes in injury law, and he's going to talk about his change of lifestyle when he came all the way to Alberta from the East Coast. Tell me about that. How long ago did you come to Calgary?
Seems like forever ago now, but I guess it's been about 10 years.
About 10 years.
About 10 years, and I guess before that I was in Halifax for 3 years, but before that I was Newfoundland for the other 20-odd years of my life.
I can only imagine how different it is here from Newfoundland, for example.
Right.
What were some things that stood out to you when you first came to Calgary 10 years ago?
Well, I definitely remember a sort of a strange feeling sort of happened right from the get-go, driving across the country, leaving the water, I guess, and sort of coming out here across the prairies and into Calgary. It felt like a bit of a strange, almost a claustrophobic feeling in a way, but it was openness or a lack of the sea being sort of a bearing for me. So that was strange, but I've adjusted over the years and come to love the mountains to the side of me instead of the water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know a lot of people comment when they come here from either Europe or Asia, for that matter. They talk about the wide open skies. Now, do you have a sense of wide open skies when you're on the East Coast because the sky's open above the ocean, or is it just a different sensation completely?
Yeah, it is a bit of a strange sensation when you say that. They call Alberta big sky country, and that sort of thing, and it's hard to really describe when I tell people, but it definitely feels somehow that there's more sky above you somehow. I don't know if it's because there are more expanses of flat land, and I don't have the sort of hills near the ocean that sort of block your vision and things, but yeah, there's definitely that big sky feeling in here.
Now, I should mention that we actually have known each other in the past. We used to work at the same law firm, and you came out here as an articling student, correct? So
right.
You just finished law school?
Yeah, exactly. Came out here as a newbie, and you were one of the first nice folks I met out here to welcome me to this side of the country.
Yeah, it was great to welcome you. And so tell me, you could have articled probably anywhere in the country, but you chose here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I definitely had my sort of net cast wide in terms of where I was going to end up, and I did get an opportunity in Calgary, and I sort of jumped on it, just knowing that a lot of friends and family had made the move to Alberta from Newfoundland and being close to mountains. I used to be an avid snowboarder, not so much anymore, but all of that sort of made me want to jump on the opportunity.
What did you know about Calgary and Alberta before you came? And just generally, what's the reputation of Alberta? Not that you can speak for everybody on the East Coast, but just in general among your personal social group, what was the impression of Alberta you had?
Yeah, well, I guess as a bayman in Newfoundland, so someone from sort of a small town, most of the folks from Newfoundland who went to Alberta ended up, working sort of in Fort McMurray and sort of different oil projects and things like that. So I really didn't know a lot about Calgary specifically. Knew it was a big city, definitely compared to what I was used to being in St. John's, Newfoundland, or in Halifax. But yeah, other than that, it was I had cousins out here, that sort of thing, but no one I really talked to on the regular, so it was definitely a bit of an adventure, a bit of a surprise.
Now, did you already know how to snowboard when you came out here?
Yeah, for sure. Well, at least East Coast snowboarding, those standards. So spent a lot of time on the smaller hills on the East Coast.
Which ski hill did you hit first? Do you remember?
I think it might have been Sunshine, but I'm not positive on that.
And did you quickly get a favorite one?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in the first few years I sort of went, Sunshine, Northway, Kostka, Lake Louise, Kicking Horse out in Golden, and Castle Mountain down south there near Pincher Creek, wherever that one is. That one was actually, I probably was a little biased. I had it on some really good powder days, so I had a real good time at Castle Mountain. I've learned to really like Kostka too, because it's not quite as busy, at least sometimes, as some of the other sort of bigger ones out in Lake Louise, Sunshine, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to talk a bit about your work, because I think you can offer some valuable insight for people, especially if they're coming here from somewhere that doesn't get a lot of snow and ice. Because tell me what happens. As I mentioned, you're an injury lawyer, but I should explain to people that the majority of your work is involving motor vehicle accidents. So what happens first big snowfall of the year?
Yeah, first big snowfall, and I guess a lot of slow commutes, and unfortunately for a lot of people, a lot of accidents. A lot of people, don't know how to drive in the winter very well, and people have been living here a long time and still don't know how to drive in the winter, and some people are dealing with ice and snow for the first few winters, and they definitely don't know how to deal with it either. So it's dangerous on the roads in general, and in the winter, lots of cars don't have good tires and don't leave enough space behind the vehicle in front of them. Yeah, and I guess in addition to the motor vehicle accidents, the winter is also the time of slip and falls. So lots of people call us after they've had injuries or experienced injuries after falling on ice or somewhere that hasn't been cleared of snow. And so that can be a busy time for us as well.
Yes, and as I mentioned, I used to work at the same firm, so I've seen the same types of files that you deal with. And one situation, or maybe I won't put words in your mouth, what kind of situation seems to come up a lot where your client, who is not at fault, finds themselves in an accident? I don't know if you know where I'm going with this, but what types of situations do you see happen a lot in terms of when a collision happens?
In terms of rear end accidents?
Yeah, okay, I'll tell you where I'm going with this.
Okay, sure.
It seemed like there were a lot of files where our client was going straight through the intersection and the other guy is going left across their path, and they think they're going to stop and they don't,
right.
And then there's a collision. And so now I'm paranoid whenever I'm at an intersection and it's turning yellow and there's somebody wanting to go left, or even if the light hasn't changed to yellow yet, it's still green. I'm afraid that they don't notice me somehow and they're going to go right across my path and I can't avoid them.
Yeah, no, exactly. I guess get a dash cam, I guess, is the best advice for that situation. And it's hard not to be extra vigilant after seeing it so many times where perhaps the driver went through a little late on the yellow and somebody was trying to complete their left turn and they thought the other person was going to stop and they never. So that one definitely comes up a lot. And that one's year round, not just in the winter for sure. Be safe out there. Defensive driving.
How do you think your driving's changed because you've been involved with injury law for 10 years now? Do you think it's changed your habits?
Yeah, for sure. I think driving is definitely not a relaxing situation most of the time, especially driving around Calgary, as I once probably was, more relaxed, listening to the music, not thinking about every situation. But yeah, after doing this for 10 years, you almost foresee things happening, and 99.9% of the time they don't, but you're almost driving down the road and you sort of see the 3 potential accidents occur every commute just because the situations that usually happen. So you learn to be defensive, you learn to slow down and try to be patient.
Mm-hmm. So I know you have a wife, you got 3 small kids. What are some activities you guys like to do in southern Alberta here?
Well, we definitely stay pretty busy. So, a lot of the times is at, our local playgrounds or taking walks in the, I live near Fish Creek Park, walk down near the river, ride our bikes and all that sort of thing. So we spend a lot of time just out doing that. And in the wintertime, we've started trying to get them to the ski hills. And then in the summertime, we're like a lot of Calgarians who like to venture into BC a little bit. So, we definitely try to take a couple road trips out towards some nice lakes and some water activities and things like that.
Mm-hmm. And there must be some things you miss about the East Coast. Can you tell me about that? And how often do you go back to visit?
We go back every year. Lots of family still there, both my wife and I. A lot of our family still in Newfoundland. So every year we'll go back to visit and bring the kids. What do I miss most? That's a tough question. I guess probably just the water is a big one. I was next to sort of a bay, not the ocean per se, but it's still next to the water, so that's a different feeling. And a little bit, I would say, as friendly as a lot of people like yourself are here in Calgary, Dan, as I've come to understand. When I'm back in Newfoundland, you definitely feel the different atmosphere when it comes to people just striking up conversations with you randomly and everyone's talking to each other and passing on the street. Even in the the bigger city of St. John's, there's more of that feeling that I definitely miss for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can relate. I try to go once a year to Slovakia, where my wife's from and where my dad was originally from. It's much more common there, where people just invite you over for dinner and invite you into their home. And here in Calgary, it feels like you really have to know each other for quite a while before someone's likely to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And even then, like you say, you may know someone for years, and it's much more sort of, like you say, planned, and everyone seems much busier, and everyone's have a full slate of activities planned, so it's often, more difficult for that sort of spontaneous gatherings and meeting new people and inviting them into events and into circles of friends and things like that.
In Slovakia, it's even common, especially in the villages and smaller towns, that it's just taken for granted that family could just show up at any time, like a cousin or whatever, could just show up at any time. And of course, you're going to have them in for dinner, and they may even stay overnight.
Right.
Is that kind of on the East Coast where people just show up at your door and they're welcomed in?
Yeah, exactly. Even in this time of, instant communication, my parents and a lot of cousins that are there in my small town would never think of trying to plan a visit or letting someone know that they're dropping by. You just go and do it. And if they're not home, you might pop over to the nearest relative and see if they're home, see if they know where the other person is. Yeah, definitely. Open house.
Yeah, I think you'd agree then. In a place like Alberta, where there's this independence where people kind of mind their own business more, which is definitely a positive too, because the flip side where everyone knows and everyone's gossiping about you and all that there's a negative side to that too, that sense of community. Here you can kind of mind your own business. If you do want connection with people, you have to make the effort. Like, you have to take steps. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that is fair to say.
And do you mind talking a bit about, I know for a little while you were living outside the city, and I believe that it was especially your wife who felt the isolation was a bit much, the lack of social connection was a bit much. Do you mind talking a bit about that, what that experience was like?
Sure, yeah. And I mean, like you say, I guess still had the opportunity, I guess, to meet a few people through some, like you say, my oldest now going into school and things like that. So grateful for those connections. But yeah, definitely at the same time, you couldn't just sort of walk down to the playground as we can now in this sort of suburbia setting. So you felt a little more disconnected outside of the city, especially, I guess, being a relatively new Albertan, not having sort of a network or a lot of people that we knew. It definitely felt a little more difficult to stay social.
Right, and you were just, half an hour outside the city, or 15, 20 minutes outside the city,
just sort of
right?
15, 20 minutes, but far enough that you had to sort of drive everywhere with the kids to do anything. You couldn't just leave the house and, go to a store or something like that on your bike. Go to a trail and things like that.
How long did that experiment last?
I think I lived outside the city for 3 years, so...
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed parts of it, because it reminded me a little of living in a more rural setting like Newfoundland. So I like those aspects, but just now with the new reality of having kids and a job, I need to commute daily. I can't sort of just live in the woods like I want to.
There's a part of you that wants to just live in the woods like Henry David Thoreau.
Yep.
Find your Walden Pond and nice.
Pond, we're nearby.
And we're here in Walden Community, coincidentally enough. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Let's say you had a friend or family member out on the East Coast who were thinking of coming to Alberta. What are some things you'd put in their mind first, want them to be aware of before they made that decision?
Well, yeah, I often have friends, sort of, Newfoundland, New Brunswick, that contemplate moving out here, and I advocate for it, and I encourage them to do so. I tell them there's, lots of young families like they are, and lots of opportunities for the kids and for themselves, and, definitely lots of positives that I like to talk about. I guess if I wanted to be frank, and if I really like the person, I'd probably warn them about the winters a little bit, and how, lots of snow on the East Coast, but generally not just feeling like the Arctic for a couple months at a time. So
yeah, do you remember what it was like the first time you experienced like minus 30 for several days in a row?
Yeah, it was definitely uncomfortable. You sort of just freeze up and turn into an icicle.
Yeah,
focus on survival.
I assume there's more humidity, like more of a damp cold on the East Coast, is that correct?
Yeah, people talk about that. It's a different cold and everything, but I just know it's so much colder out here. Like, I'd never be cold, especially with snowboarding and things. Even the coldest it would get in the winter, I guess probably like minus 20. And even if it was damp, I would be fine, but I've been so cold out here trying to snowboard.
Does the dryness ever bother you?
It can. I know it bothers my wife more. She complains of we need the humidifier going rather than the dehumidifier.
Right. Before we wrap up, Mark, I'd like to ask you a bit about the fact a lot of people who are new to Alberta or who just don't have reason to pay attention to this kind of issue might not be aware that in a couple of years, the insurance industry is going to be changing here. The government's changing it so that you're much more restricted in terms of being able to sue at-fault drivers. Generally, I think it's going to be the situation where, unless there's a criminal offense involved, you basically can't sue the at-fault driver. You just have to take what the insurance company offers. Is that generally correct? And what's that going to mean for people? And how are you personally kind of adjusting to that or preparing to adjust to that situation?
Yeah, so you're exactly right. There's some changes coming. The bill is sort of going through the legislative channels there now, and it looks like the ability, basically the right of Albertans to sue the at-fault driver is going to be taken away from them, so they'll be restricted to dealing with sort of a WCB-like system with their own insurance company and the other insurance companies involved, where they'll just be given whatever the insurance company deems appropriate, and they won't be able to hire a lawyer, make a claim. I get it, people pay too much for insurance. I complained the last time I renewed my insurance, but I think this is definitely unfortunate because a lot of people are going to be left stranded in situations after they've been injured and they can't try to get back what they've lost or to try to get the compensation they need for treatment and try to get themselves back on track. So that's definitely unfortunate. It's supposed to be at the end of 2026 that'll be in place. So that'll obviously restrict what I'm doing as an injury lawyer substantially. Most of our claims are rising from motor vehicle accidents. So we're looking to practice some other areas of law. We just had an articling student come aboard with some immigration law experience from the Philippines. So as she completes her articles, we're looking to expand into some immigration law services. So that's sort of a bit of a direction that we're going at the firm. Yeah, for the time being, people can still hire a lawyer, but that time is coming to an end soon.
Thank you for explaining that. Like I say, it's probably not at the forefront of a lot of people's minds, at least yet, but it's going to be as that end of 2026 approaches, and it's going to affect, a lot of people, not just injury lawyers, but everyone who drives. It's going to be a different picture here. Well, thank you, Mark, for talking about what it's been like the last 10 years here in Calgary and in southern Alberta for you and your family. You've offered a great perspective. You're the first East Coaster that I've interviewed.
Oh, wow.
So it's, as far as I know,
yeah,
sometimes they go incognito and you don't realize it.
They try to hide themselves.
They try to hide themselves.
Yeah. No, I'm glad. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your experiences.
Oh, you're very welcome.